In the remnants of a city once vibrant with life, the echoes of past heroics lay buried beneath layers of concrete and ash. Skyscrapers, once symbols of human achievement, now stood as stark reminders of a great battle lost. In the wake of the original Avengers' last stand against an unnamed villain, the world had plunged into chaos. Cities burned, hope dwindled, and the cries of those left behind reverberated in the empty streets. It was in this desolation that a new generation of heroes began to emerge. Ethan Chen, a lanky 19-year-old with tousled black hair and round glasses, shuffled through the rubble of what used to be his neighborhood. He had always felt different, an outsider in a world that celebrated power and prowess. Ethan was a gifted student of computer science, finding solace in coding and algorithms, far from the glimmering allure of superheroism. But destiny had other plans for him. One fateful afternoon, while tinkering with a prototype in his makeshift home lab, an explosion rattled the walls. Ethan had been experimenting with a device meant to harness energy, an endeavor he hoped could contribute to rebuilding the city. Instead, it unleashed a surge of power that coursed through him, igniting something deep within. As the dust settled, he found himself surrounded by shards of glass and twisted metal, yet something was different. He felt alive, invigorated, as if the world had shifted into sharper focus. In the following days, Ethan discovered his extraordinary ability. He could mimic the powers of anyone nearby, borrowing their strengths for a fleeting moment. The realization both thrilled and terrified him. He had always admired heroes from afar but never thought he would become one. Yet with his new power came uncertainty. Could he live up to the legacy of the greats who had fallen? His mentor, Maya, a resilient woman with a fierce spirit, had once been a sidekick to one of the original Avengers. She understood the weight of loss and the burden of carrying on. When Ethan approached her with his newfound abilities, she saw a flicker of hope. "You have the potential to make a difference, Ethan," she encouraged. "But you can't do it alone. You need a team." It wasn't long before the ragtag group of new heroes began to take shape. There was Jade, a tech prodigy with a penchant for gadgets and hacking, whose quick thinking often saved them in tight spots. Then there was Tyler, a speedster with a shadowy past, haunted by memories of battles he couldn't quite escape. Finally, there was Sophia, whose talent for creating illusions blurred the line between reality and fantasy. Together, they formed an unlikely alliance, each struggling with their own demons yet united by a shared goal: to protect their city from the shadows that threatened to consume it. As they trained, Ethan learned not only to harness his mimicry but also the importance of trust. He began to understand that true power wasn't merely in his ability to copy others but in how he combined their strengths with his own. Yet, the path was fraught with challenges. The team's dynamics were fragile, personal egos clashed, leading to disagreements and mistrust. One evening, after a particularly rough training session, tensions boiled over. "You're just a kid playing at being a hero," Tyler snapped at Ethan, frustration etched across his face. "You think you can just copy what we do and be one of us?" Ethan's heart sank. "I'm trying to help. I didn't ask for this power. I just want to make a difference." His voice cracked, the weight of their expectations pressing heavily upon him. Maya stepped in, her voice firm yet compassionate. "We all have our struggles. This isn't about competition, it's about collaboration. You must learn to lean on each other, to become a true team." That night, as the city lay shrouded in darkness, Ethan gazed out from their makeshift headquarters, a crumbling building adorned with makeshift technology and plans for their next moves. He understood that to become a hero meant more than wielding power. It was about standing together, sharing burdens, and learning to trust. Then, the inevitable came. The shadow, a former ally turned villain, began to rise from the ashes of despair. Once a trusted figure among the original Avengers, he now sought revenge on those who had wronged him. He rallied remnants of the old foes, sowing chaos throughout the city. Ethan and his team learned of his plan through news reports detailing attacks on critical infrastructures, a power grid here, a water supply there. Each assault further entrenched the fear that gripped the city. The day came when the Shadow launched his full-scale attack. Explosions rocked the ground, and the sky filled with dark clouds of smoke as his forces unleashed havoc. Ethan's heart raced. This was it, the moment they had prepared for, yet doubt gnawed at him. Could they truly stand against the legacy of such formidable enemies? Gathering in their base, the team strategized amidst the chaos. "We need to split up," Maya instructed. "We can't let them take out the city's lifelines. We'll divide and conquer." Ethan felt a surge of confidence as he looked at his friends. "I'll mimic whatever abilities I can to support you," he vowed, determination swelling within him. "We'll find a way." The battle that ensued was fierce. Jade hacked into enemy systems, disabling surveillance and turning the villain's own technology against them. Tyler darted through the streets, delivering critical information and swift blows to the enemies in his path. Sophia conjured illusions, misleading foes and creating distractions, allowing her teammates to regroup. As chaos erupted around them, Ethan found himself separated from the group. His heart pounded in his chest as he confronted the Shadow in an abandoned alley, the air thick with tension. The Shadow loomed over him, a figure draped in darkness, laughter echoing ominously. "So, the new generation thinks they can take on the likes of me? You're just a child pretending to be a hero." For a moment, doubt flooded Ethan's mind, but he remembered his teammates and everything they had fought for. Drawing on his abilities, he focused, watching the Shadow's movements closely. With a flick of his wrist, the Shadow unleashed a burst of energy, and in that instant, Ethan reached deep within himself. He mimicked the energy projection, channeling it with a newfound understanding of his own power. A brilliant light erupted as Ethan redirected the energy, catching the Shadow off guard. The villain staggered back, surprise etched on his face. "How? This isn't just mimicry," Ethan shouted, confidence surging. "This is who I am." With every ounce of willpower, he combined his mimicry with his unique intuition, anticipating the Shadow's next move. He launched a counterattack that sent the Shadow sprawling, the dark figure defeated. As the dust settled, Ethan rejoined his team, who had also triumphed against their own battles. Together, they stood, battered but unbroken, as the last remnants of the Shadow's forces fled. In the aftermath, they took a moment to catch their breath, the weight of victory settling in. Maya approached them, pride shining in her eyes. "You did it. You all did it. You showed what it means to be a team." Ethan looked around at his friends, his heart swelling with gratitude. They had come together, forging bonds stronger than any power alone could create. He realized that he was no longer just a kid trying to copy the greats, he was part of something bigger, an alliance of hope and resilience. As they stood amidst the ruins of the city, the sun began to break through the clouds, casting light on the destruction. In that moment, Ethan understood that they were not just heirs to a legacy but the architects of a new one. They vowed to protect the city, to build it back stronger than before, and to honor the heroes who had come before them. But as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows, an ominous message flickered on a nearby screen. It was a warning, one that hinted at new threats lurking just beyond the edge of their newfound victory. The new generation of heroes would have to stand vigilant, ready to face whatever darkness lay ahead. Ethan smiled at his team, resolve shining in his eyes. They were ready for whatever came next. They were the Avengers, a new generation forged in fire, united by hope. And they would fight for their city, together. As twilight descended upon the city, Ethan stood with his teammates, the remnants of the battle still echoing in their ears. The victory they had just achieved felt both monumental and fleeting, like sand slipping through their fingers. The ominous message on the screen continued to flicker in Ethan's mind, a stark reminder that their fight was far from over. What do you think it means? Jade asked, her brow furrowed as she analyzed the digital display. The cryptic message had flashed warnings of new enemies rising and hinted at alliances forming among the old foes. It sounds like there's something bigger brewing. Yeah, like a storm on the horizon, Tyler added, kicking a piece of debris. We need to be ready. Whoever it is, they're not going to wait for us to catch our breath. Ethan nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility settle heavily on his shoulders. Maya always said we had to stay vigilant. We can't let our guard down, especially now. He turned to look at his friends, their expressions reflecting a mix of determination and concern. Let's regroup at the base and come up with a plan. We need to figure out who's behind this and how to stop them. The team made their way back to their headquarters, the streets still littered with remnants of chaos. As they entered their makeshift sanctuary, the familiar sounds of whirring gadgets and buzzing screens greeted them. The space was cluttered but filled with potential, a testament to their determination to make a difference. Ethan felt a flicker of hope. They had come so far, and together, they could face whatever challenge lay ahead. Gathering around the main table, they spread out the intel they had collected. Jade pulled up a map on the screen, highlighting the locations of the recent attacks. If we analyze these patterns, maybe we can predict where they'll strike next, she suggested. Her fingers danced over the keyboard, bringing up various surveillance feeds and reports. Sophia, her eyes sharp and focused, chimed in. Look here, she pointed at a series of dots clustering near an abandoned industrial area. This is where they hit hardest. It's like they're trying to draw us in. Or they're preparing for something bigger, Tyler mused. We should go check it out. Get a feel for what we're dealing with. Ethan felt a rush of excitement and trepidation. Are we really ready for this? We just fought off the shadow. What if this is worse? It doesn't matter if we're ready or not, Tyler replied, a steely edge in his voice. We have to be. We can't let fear dictate our actions. Jade nodded, her gaze unwavering. We've trained for this. We've fought together and come out stronger. If we wait, we give them the upper hand. Ethan took a deep breath, feeling the surge of confidence in his friend's words. They were right. They had faced down their fears and come out on the other side. Okay, let's do it. But we stick together. No one goes off on their own. The team quickly geared up, checking their equipment and discussing their strategy for approaching the industrial site. They moved with a sense of urgency, fueled by adrenaline and the weight of their mission. Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that this was a pivotal moment, one that would define not just their legacy but their identities as heroes. As they approached the site, the atmosphere thickened with tension. The air was heavy, charged with the remnants of recent conflict. Shadows danced among the crumbling structures, and the echoes of distant machinery hummed ominously. Ethan felt the pulse of the city beneath his feet, a reminder of what was at stake. Stay sharp, Tyler whispered as they crept closer, their senses heightened. We don't know what's waiting for us in there. Ethan's heart raced as they made their way inside, navigating through debris and broken glass. The place felt alive, each creak and rustle amplifying their unease. They split up to cover more ground, staying within earshot, and Ethan felt a surge of power as he approached a large room at the back of the facility. Inside, the air was thick with tension. Flickering lights illuminated a makeshift control center, where a group of hooded figures were gathered around a large screen. The image was grainy, but Ethan recognized the familiar faces of old villains, remnants of the Shadows League. His pulse quickened as he realized this was what they had feared, an alliance of enemies, plotting their next move. Ethan stepped back, signaling to his teammates. "We need to report this," he whispered urgently. But as he turned to leave, one of the hooded figures glanced in his direction. The surprise registered for only a moment before alarms blared throughout the facility. "A move. They know we're here," Tyler shouted, adrenaline surging as they scrambled back to regroup. The team quickly found their way to an exit, but not before encountering the hooded figures, who sprang into action, revealing their powers. Ethan instinctively felt the rush of energy as he mirrored one of the villains, channeling their abilities to create a force field just in time to deflect a powerful blast. "We need to hold them off," he yelled, adrenaline surging through him. Jade jumped into action, her gadgets whirring to life as she set traps and distractions, momentarily stalling their attackers. Tyler zipped around, using his speed to confuse their opponents, while Sophia conjured illusions to create chaos among the enemy ranks. Ethan focused, drawing on their powers and weaving them into his mimicry, but as more villains joined the fray, he felt the strain of managing so many abilities at once. "I can't keep this up," he shouted, desperation creeping into his voice. "Stick together." Maya's voice cut through the chaos. "We need to find a way to regroup and escape." Ethan's heart raced as they pushed through the melee, using their unique abilities to create openings. The chaos intensified, with energy blasts and illusions colliding in a frenzy. Just as they reached a doorway, a powerful wave of energy surged through the air, slamming against Ethan and sending him sprawling to the ground. Dazed, he fought to regain his focus. He could hear his teammates calling out to him, their voices blending into the cacophony of battle. With a surge of determination, he pushed himself back to his feet, drawing on the power within him. He focused on the chaos around him, searching for a way to turn the tide. "Ethan!" Tyler shouted, barely avoiding a strike from one of the villains. "We need you." Fueled by their urgency, Ethan concentrated, his vision narrowing until all he could see was the energy flowing through the room. He channeled it, letting the abilities of those around him guide him. He reached out, borrowing the strength of his teammates and blending their powers into one concentrated blast. The energy coalesced, shimmering in the air as he aimed it at the villains. "Now!" Ethan yelled, releasing the energy in a burst of light that illuminated the room. The combined force hit the group of attackers, sending them reeling back, stunned. For a moment, silence fell over the chaos, and Ethan stood, panting, the weight of exhaustion settling over him. "Let's go!" Jade shouted, breaking the stillness. They sprinted through the doorway, moving as one unit, their hearts pounding in unison. Outside, they rushed to a nearby alley, collapsing against the cool bricks, breathless and exhilarated. They had escaped, but the reality of what they faced loomed over them like a dark cloud. "What just happened back there?" Tyler gasped, leaning against the wall. "That was insane." Ethan wiped sweat from his brow, his heart racing. "I don't know how I did that," he admitted, still trying to process the experience. "But it felt different. Like I wasn't just copying, I was actually using my own strength." Maya stepped forward, her expression serious. "That's significant, Ethan. It means you're growing into your abilities." But we can't underestimate what's ahead of us. They're forming an alliance, and we need to be prepared for anything." As they gathered their thoughts, the message they had seen earlier echoed in Ethan's mind. They were being drawn into something larger than themselves. They had survived this encounter, but the reality was that they were now on the radar of formidable foes who would stop at nothing to reclaim their power. "We need to find out what they're planning," Jade suggested, her mind already racing ahead. "If we can get intel on their next move, we might be able to sabotage their efforts." "Agreed," Tyler nodded, the adrenaline still coursing through him. "We can't let them get the upper hand." With their resolve renewed, they made a pact to not only defend their city but to actively seek out the enemies lurking in the shadows. They knew the stakes were higher now, and the fight was far from over. The darkness they had faced was merely a precursor to something even more significant. As they headed back to their base, Ethan felt a sense of purpose ignite within him. They were not just a group of young heroes, they were a new generation poised to stand against the tide of chaos. Each step forward was a commitment to their city and to each other. In the days that followed, they worked tirelessly, collecting information and training harder than ever. They learned to trust in one another, using their unique abilities to cover gaps in their defenses. As they prepared for the challenges that lay ahead, Ethan began to understand the true essence of being a hero. It was about more than power, it was about courage, resilience, and the bonds forged in battle. The city outside continued to recover, its spirit flickering like a candle in the wind. But within the walls of their base, a new light was igniting, a light fueled by hope, unity, and the belief that they could reclaim their world from the darkness that threatened to engulf it. As they gathered one evening, reviewing their findings, a new message came through on the screen, one that sent a chill down Ethan's spine. It was an invitation to meet, signed by one of the villains they had faced, the Unseen. It promised a truce, a chance to join forces against a greater threat. Ethan exchanged glances with his teammates. "Is this a trap?" he asked, uncertainty creeping in. "Maybe," Jade replied, her eyes narrowed in thought. "But it could also be an opportunity. If they want to meet, we need to find out why." Tyler crossed his arms, weighing the risks. "We can't walk into a meeting like this without a plan. We need to be prepared for anything." Maya nodded, her expression thoughtful. "This could be our chance to gather more information. But we must approach with caution. Trust your instincts, and remember, we're stronger together." The decision weighed heavily on Ethan. They had come so far, and he couldn't shake the feeling that this was a pivotal moment. With every fiber of his being, he wanted to protect his friends, to shield them from the shadows that lurked just beyond their reach. But he also understood that sometimes, stepping into the darkness was the only way to bring light. The next day, they prepared for the meeting with the Unseen. Ethan felt a mix of excitement and dread as they suited up, each of them taking a moment to steel themselves for what lay ahead. They had trained for this, and while the stakes were high, they knew they could count on one another. As they approached the designated location, a deserted warehouse on the outskirts of the city, Ethan felt the weight of anticipation in the air. The sky was overcast, casting a gray pallor over the landscape, mirroring the uncertainty that gnawed at his gut. "Stick together," Maya reminded them as they stepped inside. The warehouse was vast, shadows stretching across the concrete floor. In the center stood the Unseen, a figure cloaked in darkness, their features obscured. "Welcome," the voice echoed, smooth yet chilling. "You've shown great promise, new generation. I believe we can be of mutual benefit to one another." Ethan's heart raced. "What do you want from us?" he demanded, trying to mask the fear in his voice. "Information," the Unseen replied, stepping forward, the shadows flickering around them. There are forces at play that even we cannot control. Enemies far more powerful than the remnants you've faced. If you want to protect your city, you will need allies. We can help you, but first, you must prove your worth. What's the catch? Tyler interjected, his skepticism clear. Prove yourselves in battle, the unseen stated, a smirk hidden within the folds of the cloak. Join us for a test against a greater enemy. If you succeed, the alliance will be yours. If you fail, you will become just another casualty in this war. Ethan exchanged glances with his teammates, weighing the risk. He knew they could not afford to ignore this opportunity, yet the threat of betrayal loomed large. "We'll consider your offer," he said, striving to keep his voice steady. "Time is of the essence," the unseen replied. "I will send you the details. Choose wisely." With that, the figure melted back into the shadows, leaving them alone in the warehouse, the air thick with tension. "What do we do now?" Jade asked, concern etched on her face. "We need to discuss our options," Maya replied, her expression serious. "This could be a chance to learn more about our enemies and gain powerful allies. But we must also prepare for the possibility that it's a trap." As they left the warehouse, Ethan's mind whirled. The invitation to join forces was tantalizing yet terrifying. The looming threat they sensed was real, and the stakes had never been higher. He felt the burden of leadership heavy upon him, a weight that both exhilarated and terrified him. Back at their base, they gathered around the table, the atmosphere charged with urgency. "This is our chance," Ethan began, his voice steadying. "But we have to be smart. We can't let our guard down. We need to use this opportunity to gather as much information as we can." "Agreed," Tyler said. "We should analyze the intel they provide and see if we can identify the greater threat they mentioned. Plus, we need to strategize our battle tactics," Jade added. "If we do this, we need to go in prepared for anything." As they delved into planning, Ethan felt a sense of purpose ignite within him. They were no longer just a group of kids trying to imitate their heroes. They were carving out their own identity, standing at the precipice of something greater. In the following days, they trained harder, honing their skills and building their strength as a team. They had faced down shadows before, but now they were preparing to confront the very essence of darkness itself. The threat they sensed was real, and they had to be ready. The night before the battle, they gathered for a final strategy session, the weight of their decisions hanging heavy in the air. "We need to remember why we're doing this," Maya said, her voice steady. "It's not just about proving ourselves, it's about protecting our city and each other." Ethan looked around at his friends, the determination in their eyes mirroring his own. "No matter what happens, we stick together. We trust in each other and our abilities." As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows, they prepared for the fight ahead. Ethan felt the energy buzzing within him, a reminder of the powers he had harnessed and the strength of his team. They were ready to face whatever awaited them, united by their purpose and the bonds they had forged in battle. The day of the test arrived, and they stood at the edge of the battlefield, adrenaline coursing through their veins. The unseen's message had led them to a desolate location, shrouded in mystery. Ethan felt a thrill of fear and excitement as they stepped onto the battlefield, ready to confront the unknown. As they faced their opponents, a rush of energy surged through Ethan, awakening his mimicry. With every blast and strike, he felt the weight of their training, the strength of his friends beside him. Together, they fought fiercely, channeling their abilities into a symphony of power and teamwork. Each moment was a test, a challenge that pushed them to their limits. Yet through it all, Ethan felt a profound sense of belonging. They were a unit, a force to be reckoned with, and together they could overcome anything. In the heat of battle, Ethan tapped into the depths of his mimicry, combining his powers with his teammates in ways he had never imagined. He drew on their strengths, amplifying their abilities as they fought back against the tide of darkness. As the dust settled, Ethan stood with his friends, breathless and exhilarated. They had faced down their fears and emerged victorious, their bond stronger than ever. The shadows that had threatened to consume them had been cast away, revealing the light of their friendship and purpose. And as they looked to the horizon, the dawn of a new day began to break, illuminating the path ahead. They were not just a new generation of heroes, they were a force of hope, ready to stand against the darkness and protect the world they loved. They had proven themselves, and now the future awaited. With the promise of new adventures on the horizon, Ethan felt a sense of excitement coursing through him. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, united in their purpose and unbreakable in their resolve. The story of the new generation had only just begun. Together, they would write a new chapter in the legacy of heroes, standing strong against the shadows and illuminating the path for those who would come after them. And with every step, they knew they would rise to meet the dawn, ready to embrace whatever came next. Their fight was far from over, but they were ready, together. And with that, the echoes of their triumph resounded in the city, a promise of hope and the unyielding spirit of heroes reborn.